Have you ever observed how people only truly appreciate you once you've withdrawn? Have you noticed how, when you're perpetually available, that's precisely when you're least acknowledged? Indeed, Carl Jung already expounded upon the transformative power of absence, and how our constant presence can be a significant impediment to the very essence of our identity. If you've ever felt rendered invisible by excessive giving, or found yourself weary of perpetually languishing in the periphery, then remain with me until the denouement. And should this resonate with your experience, I implore you to subscribe to the channel forthwith, lest you forfeit subsequent installments of this profound exegesis on presence, absence, and self-sabotage, as elucidated by Jung. Let us embark upon this exploration in unison. Introduction and contextualization. Presence is a gift, yet absence can be a revolution. We inhabit an era wherein ubiquitous availability is erroneously conflated with worth, affection, and loyalty. We are indoctrinated to believe that perpetual readiness for others, be it in the professional sphere, familial bonds, or interpersonal relationships, constitutes a virtue. Yet the psychological toll of this relentless accessibility remains largely unaddressed. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and seminal figure in depth psychology, was among the vanguard who challenged this prevailing myth. For him, the individuation journey, the process of authentically becoming oneself, necessitates mastering the power of limitation, absence, and strategic withdrawal. In this video, we'll dissect Jung's perspective on the perils of excessive availability. We'll explore how perpetually acquiescing can serve as an escape from the self, a mechanism to circumvent confronting our innermost needs. And most crucially, we'll uncover how the simple act of becoming less accessible can profoundly transform your self-esteem, your vitality, and the way the world perceives you. Brace yourself to re-examine your own narrative. This isn't about a facile quick fix. It's about profound introspection and the requisite disquietude, drawing upon Jung's insights concerning the shadow self, boundaries, individuation, and the paradox of presence. Definition of the core concept. What constitutes being unavailable? We are not addressing the act of becoming a recluse, vanishing from the world, or adopting an attitude of detachment. Rather, this concerns acknowledging the inherent value of your presence and recognizing that excessive availability tends to diminish that value, both for others and, crucially, for yourself. Jung posited that a person perpetually available becomes predictable, even obvious, and that which is obvious in the tapestry of human experience is swiftly forgotten or undervalued. In essence, we inhabit a paradox. The more one gives of oneself, the less others appreciate one's true worth. Behind this conduct lies an unconscious yearning for validation, a dread of abandonment, and a profound aversion to confronting one's own solitude. Jung underscored the observation that a significant portion of our actions on behalf of others, including this excessive willingness to please, frequently serves as a bulwark against the necessity of grappling with our own internal voids. The concept of transformative absence stems from the notion that withdrawal, when undertaken with awareness, is not selfishness, but rather an act of self-respect and consideration for others. It constitutes the genesis of the individuation process, wherein we learn to decline, to establish boundaries, and ultimately to inhabit our own internal space. Why does this resonate with you? If you find yourself perpetually depleted, if individuals only recall you when they require something, or if your yes has depreciated in value, you may be experiencing the very Jungian dilemma of availability. This impacts everything from your mental well-being, self-esteem, and autonomy to the quality of your interpersonal relationships. And perhaps most crucially, it hinders your discovery of your authentic self, unburdened by the weight of others' expectations and needs. In the ensuing video installments, we shall delve into this very subject matter, dissecting the underlying psychological mechanisms of this pattern, illustrating commonplace examples, examining its ramifications, and outlining pragmatic pathways for initiating a paradigm shift. If this resonates with you, share this video forthwith with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the full unfolding. In the forthcoming installment, we will dissect how this mechanism takes root in the mind and how you can begin to recognize it within yourself. I'll see you there. Deep dive into a key concept, the power of absence in Jungian psychology. Having grasped the concept of availability and its potential to erode our sense of self, the time has come to delve into Jungian psychology to comprehend how absence, or the strategic act of withdrawal, is intrinsically linked to the individuation process. Jung viewed the human psyche as a multifaceted entity, fractured by a multitude of forces vying for our focus and vitality. Paramount among these, in his estimation, was the unconscious, the repository of what he termed the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we disavow, suppress, or are otherwise unwilling to confront. The shadow, in a sense, is the reflection of all that we are unwilling to acknowledge or confront within ourselves, encompassing traumas, fears, and unrealized desires. When we proffer excessive availability to others, we are frequently evading this shadow, attempting to assuage an inner void through the validation of external approval. Only the translated text. Jung posited that the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming the authentic and integrated self, necessitates a confrontation with the shadow. This demands a withdrawal, a temporary sequestration from all distractions, enabling us to introspect and perceive our true selves, unencumbered by external expectations. This withdrawal transcends the merely corporeal. It encompasses the mental and emotional spheres as well. It necessitates a cessation of perpetually being for others and an initiation of being for oneself. What, in essence, is your true desire? What resonates authentically within your being? Absence, in this context, does not constitute an abandonment of those around you, but rather a means of rechanneling one's energies towards self-discovery and healing. Mechanisms and functioning. How absence manifests in the psyche and human behavior. Having established a foundational understanding of the core concept, let us now delve into an examination of how absence manifests within psychological mechanisms and observable human conduct. Jung elucidated the concept of archetypes, the primordial images and figures that populate the collective unconscious. These archetypes, encompassing figures such as the hero, the shadow, and the sage, are not merely abstract constructs. Rather, they represent dynamic forces within our psyche. They exert a profound influence on our decisions, our anxieties, and the very trajectory of our actions. When broaching the subject of absence, one of the most salient figures in the realm of Jungian psychology is the animus archetype, which embodies the feminine or masculine essence residing within each individual. This archetype presents us with the imperative to integrate our non-evident characteristics, those we lack or actively repudiate. The animus in men, or the anima in women, serves as a manifestation of that which remains obscured in our lives, but which must be acknowledged for the attainment of wholeness. The ensuing absence, therefore, presents an opportunity to integrate these archetypes, to confront the shadow self, and to facilitate the psyche's healing and wholeness. However, how does this translate into everyday behaviors? Envision an individual perpetually at the disposal of others, unfailingly prepared to render assistance. As their sense of self gradually dissipates amidst the expectations of those around them, they forfeit the capacity for self-recognition. In this context, absence becomes a prerequisite, enabling this person to disengage and rediscover their authentic identity. This is not about neglecting others, but rather about affording oneself the necessary latitude to discern one's own needs. Practical examples and illustrations. What absence can signify in practice? Let's illuminate this with practical examples. The overworked individual, a person who perpetually eschews the word no in their professional sphere, consistently embraces every undertaking and remains perpetually accessible, often evinces a flight from a confrontation with their own insecurities. They perceive their self-worth as inextricably tethered to their productivity, and their absence, a failure to comply or acquiesce to all requests, would engender a sense of insignificance. However, upon mastering the art of refusal and distancing themselves from certain demands, they commence to recognize their intrinsic value, transcending the confines of their contributions to others. Personal relationships. In personal relationships, excessive availability can engender imbalanced dynamics. When we consistently make ourselves readily accessible to another, we risk not only the erosion of our own sense of self, but also the fostering of a dependency paradigm. The strategic absence of dedicated time for introspection and self-care assists in re-establishing equilibrium, as it affords the individual the opportunity to contemplate their own needs and aspirations rather than solely those of others. Spaces for reflection. One of the most profound practices Jung advocated was silence, or the withdrawal from the external world in order to connect with the unconscious. He held that introspection, that pivotal moment when we cease to perform for others and begin to act for ourselves, constituted one of the most significant pathways to healing. In a daily practice, this could be as uncomplicated as spending time alone, meditating, or even undertaking a weekend retreat. By undertaking these retreats, we engender the requisite space to confront the shadow self, unearth our authentic core, and initiate its integration. Now that you've grasped the ways in which absence manifests within the psyche and influences human behavior, what are your thoughts on commencing the practical application of this contemplation in your own life? Commence forthwith. Take a moment for introspection and discern where you might carve out space for the emergence of your authentic self. And in the forthcoming video, we shall delve into the ramifications and repercussions of neglecting this fundamental need for absence. Should you find resonance with the subject matter we've examined herein, do not miss Part 3. Subscribe and activate notifications. Negative repercussions of neglecting absence. Having grasped the concept of absence and the critical significance of strategic withdrawal in the process of individuation, let us now delve into the ramifications of disregarding it and persisting in a life of unremitting availability. Carl Jung posited that when we forsake the exigency to pause, contemplate, and disengage from external pressures, we cultivate a fertile ground for a plethora of emotional and psychological pathologies. Excessive accessibility is not merely detrimental to our selfhood, but can profoundly impinge upon our mental well-being. The most immediate and discernible consequence is exhaustion. Being perpetually at everyone's beck and call inevitably results in an overburdened body and mind. This depletion, though insidious, runs deep. Consider the sheer expenditure of energy required to remain perpetually on, perpetually accessible, perpetually obliging. This fosters an evasion of self-reflection. As we concentrate on appeasing or accommodating others, we neglect the critical practice of introspection and self-care. Jung posited that when an individual neglects the process of individuation, they become, in a sense, ensnared by the expectations of others. The cost of this self-abandonment manifests as a depletion of psychic energy. The body subsequently begins to respond with symptoms of stress, insomnia, and even more serious maladies, such as burnout syndrome. The pervasive inability to articulate no frequently stems from a profound trepidation of rejection, non-acceptance, or ostracism. This fear, potentially originating in childhood or from traumatic experiences, precipitates a vicious cycle wherein the individual dedicates themselves to the appeasement of others, to their own detriment. Only the translated text. Jung posited that a life excessively subservient to external expectations engenders an internal conflict of identity. The individual becomes disengaged from their authentic self, ultimately succumbing to the throes of anxiety. When we fail to acknowledge our intrinsic essence and needs, depression may manifest as an unconscious attempt to elicit assistance or validation. Ignoring the significance of withdrawing from others to cultivate self-understanding can precipitate an erosion of identity. What constitutes the self when deprived of the space to nurture its authentic expression? In his seminal work, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung elucidates how periods of silence and introspection are fundamentally crucial to the process of individuation. When we retreat, we afford ourselves the latitude to be our genuine selves, unencumbered by the masks and camouflage we adopt to appease others. The erosion of identity can also manifest within relationships. When one neglects to allocate the necessary time for introspection regarding their own sentiments, aspirations, and boundaries, they begin to flounder in a sea of external expectations, ultimately losing sight of their authentic self and the very essence of their life's ambitions. Behavioral patterns emerging from excessive availability. Let us now delineate some of the behavioral patterns that manifest when we are excessively available, thereby neglecting the very concept of absence. 1. Codependency. Codependency represents one of the most prevalent dynamics within relationships, characterized by a consistent pattern of self-sacrifice on the part of one individual for another. Codependency denotes a dysfunctional behavioral pattern where an individual's emotional well-being is inextricably linked to another person. The codependent individual perceives their identity as fundamentally intertwined with the other person's, thus impeding their capacity to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. This phenomenon can manifest itself in friendships, familial bonds, or, most prominently, within romantic relationships. The codependent individual, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, lacks a clear sense of self, but harbors an insatiable need for external validation, deriving a sense of worth solely from the approval of others. 2. Boundary deficiencies. Another behavioral paradigm manifests as a pronounced lack of boundaries. When the capacity to decline requests is absent, we internalize external demands as if they were our own. This conduct can cultivate frustration and resentment, ultimately leading to feelings of being overwhelmed and consequently incapable of attending to our personal requirements. The absence of boundaries invariably precipitates dysfunctional relationships, characterized by compromised communication and eroded mutual respect. When one fails to establish limits, they invariably cede priority to others, and individuals may come to perceive one's readily available assistance as an entitlement, failing to appreciate its value. 3. Unremitting pursuit of approval. The relentless craving for validation from external sources is a direct corollary of deficient boundaries. Jung posited that the individual who perpetually sacrifices themselves for others ultimately forfeits their own soul in the process. They relinquish their authenticity, transforming into a mere persona designed to appease the expectations of those around them. This conduct proves exceedingly detrimental as the individual commences the construction of a fabricated self, a social persona, meticulously crafted by the exigencies of approval and acceptance. Ultimately, the person finds themselves estranged from their authentic identity, a schism that can engender profound feelings of emptiness and a lack of direction. Societal ramifications: how absence shapes social dynamics. Within the broader tapestry of social dynamics, absence, too, exerts a significant influence. While perpetual availability is often valorized as a virtue, it can, conversely, be intricately interwoven with systems of exploitation. We inhabit a society perpetually tethered to availability, where professional obligations and social interactions demand unremitting responsiveness. The contemporary world venerates hyperconnectivity, rapid replies, and instantaneous service. This, however, has engendered a collective exhaustion. What was initially conceived as a boon of technology and communication has ultimately precipitated an emotional and psychological overload. The pervasive culture of always-on accessibility is eroding individuals' capacity for withdrawal, reflection, and reconnection with their core selves. The very space of absence, so critical to psychological well-being, has become the exception in a society that prioritizes productivity above all else. Another significant societal ramification is the superficiality of interpersonal connections. When individuals are perpetually time-constrained, they frequently become ensnared in shallow relationships, devoid of substantive depth. This dearth of authenticity in interactions can adversely impact both the emotional well-being of individuals and the caliber of the bonds they forge. Jung further posited that salutary human interactions necessitate both a sanctuary for introspection and an acknowledgement of the multifaceted nature of the human condition. Within a society that champions incessant availability, this depth is frequently forfeited. Now that you've grasped the ramifications of disregarding the necessity of absence in your life, contemplate, how have you been managing your own availability? If you've recognized yourself in these patterns, in the next video, we'll delve into how to integrate absence in a healthy manner and begin to alter these behavioral patterns. Don't miss part 4. And, if you're poised to initiate this transformation, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Share this video with someone who also needs to reflect on this. Pathways to integration or transcendence, navigating absence in a healthy manner. Having thoroughly explored the concept of absence and its ramifications, the time has come to concentrate on what truly matters, how to integrate this absence into your life in a healthy and transformative way. If you've persevered to this point, you are likely poised to embark on the initial stride towards a novel behavioral paradigm, one that is more balanced, more authentic, and above all, more genuine. One of the most potent tools you can immediately deploy is the simple act of uttering no. No is emancipatory. It is not a dismissal of others, but rather an affirmation of your intrinsic worth and your own requirements. Jung posited that the most difficult thing is to be yourself. And yet, this is fundamental to the process of individuation. Saying no to others is often, in essence, saying yes to oneself. Begin with incremental steps. When someone requests something of you and you do not feel comfortable or available, simply say no. Observe how this impacts your emotions and your overall well-being. You will be astonished by the degree to which this can be liberating. As previously alluded to, Jung underscored the significance of silence. A protracted spiritual sojourn is not requisite, unless of course one desires it, but cultivating fleeting moments of introspection throughout one's day can prove transformative. This might encompass something as elementary as a solitary amble, 15 minutes of morning meditation, or even simply dedicating time to solitude, devoid of digital distractions. Such moments are pivotal in fostering reconnection with one's inner self. They are not a squandering of precious time, but rather a means of carving out space to discern one's own needs and aspirations. As Jung himself posited, introspection enables a deeper comprehension of the self, thereby empowering one to make choices more consonant with one's authentic core. Creating and upholding healthy boundaries constitutes one of the most significant challenges we face, particularly within a society that implicitly encourages constant availability. Begin by pinpointing the areas of your life where your boundaries are most porous. Do you struggle to decline requests at work, in your personal relationships? Identifying these vulnerable areas represents the initial stride toward implementing meaningful change. Jung articulated the concept of individuation, which encapsulates the process of integrating the disparate facets of our psyche in pursuit of greater authenticity. This invariably entails learning to establish boundaries so that your energy, your time, and your mental well-being are safeguarded. One of Jung's most profound teachings revolves around the quest for the center, our purest, most authentic essence. This entails that when you disengage to contemplate and rejuvenate, you begin to recognize that ultimately you alone bear the responsibility for your own happiness and equilibrium. Returning to the center signifies reconnecting with your core, with what you genuinely desire and require. It is immaterial what others anticipate of you. What truly matters is what you expect of yourself. When you initiate a healthy detachment, you find that rather than experiencing a loss, you gain. You gain clarity, you gain time, you gain purpose. Now that we've traversed the spectrum from the readily available, the perpetually acquiescent, to the terrain of refusal and absence, I implore you to contemplate what is the very essence of your aspirations for your life. This is not a matter of self-centeredness or detachment from the concerns of others. Rather, it is about honoring your own requirements, thereby enabling you to present a more robust, genuine, and well-balanced version of yourself to the world. As you consciously cultivate the art of absence, you not only fortify your own inner resilience, but also foster relationships of greater depth and sincerity, ones that do not hinge upon your ceaseless availability as a prerequisite for your sense of worth. So my invitation to you is this: initiate action forthwith. Commence with incremental shifts, cultivating moments of silence, introspection, and self-regard. If you have begun to implement these concepts, please share your experiences in the comments section, detailing your journey of self-discovery. I would be genuinely enthralled to learn how this undertaking has impacted your life. If you've made it this far and wish to continue receiving transformative content on depth psychology, individuation, and self-discovery, subscribe to the channel immediately and activate notifications. Do not miss upcoming videos, where we will continue to explore further profound concepts for your personal enrichment. Now, I'm eager to hear from you. How have you been navigating the landscape of your own availability? What boundaries do you find essential to delineate in order to begin living a more authentic existence? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and consider disseminating this video to anyone you believe could benefit from understanding the critical importance of stepping away in order to rediscover themselves.